Alright, let the outrage commence. Or we could just talk about this rationally. Dear transgendered people, you're abnormal and you're new. You're abnormal in that you occur only once out of every 333 people, and you're new in the sense that in the mid-90s, this is how people felt about transgendered people.
Einhorn is a man! Oh my God! Einhorn is a man!
You know what? There was no backlash to that scene whatsoever. You're expecting a lot from a lot of people. It's a new thing. It's kind of a flash in the pan, whether or not you think it is. But, you know, with the whole Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner thing, this is kind of surfaced recently. This is not... people don't know how to react to transgendered people. They ask questions because they're curious, not because they're oppressive. They're asking questions because they're not sure. Look, you're expecting a lot from society. Transgendered people are relatively new. They were not only uncommon, I could only think of one transgendered person before 1990 was RuPaul. People don't know how to react. They ask questions out of curiosity. It's not cis oppression. Look, you're not going to get any preferential treatment. The fact is, you're going to get made fun of. It's not a hate crime. Everybody gets made fun of. And you're going to have to field some sex questions. Everybody answers sex questions. It's not a transgendered issue. Stop getting enraged about shit. It's irritating. And, by the way, nobody gives a fuck about your pronouns. No one cares about your pronouns. Sure, tell your friends and family and people that you know and interact with, but the guy at the bus stop doesn't give a fuck. Stop imposing linguistical constraints on strangers. Don't be appalled if they call you he if you want to be called she. It doesn't matter. Get over it. Why don't you just go accomplish something instead of making gender a central focus of your entire being? Why don't you go make something of yourself? Being transgendered is a mental disorder, and before you overreact, it is a mental disorder. In the sense that every single cell in your body is assigned 2 chromosomes, either XX or XY, besides your reproductive cells. Meaning, when you ironically say, people are judging me based on my penis or vagina, they're actually judging you based on every other cell besides your reproductive cells. So it's kind of odd that you picked that out. You are male or female at birth, based on your chromosomes. No matter what you feel like, you will always be that way. If anxiety is a mental disorder, transgenderism is definitely a mental disorder. When you feel differently than every single cell in your body, if your chromosomes are different than the way you feel, I would consider that a disorder. When you want to go out and get medical intervention that costs tens of thousands of dollars to reassign your body, even though you can't change your chromosomes, and take hormones to be something different, I would call that a disorder. A pretty substantial, significant disorder. It's nothing to be outraged at. Who cares if you have a disorder? And to be honest, there is medication for it if you want treatment. You shouldn't be appalled by this. It may be easier than going through reassignment surgery and taking hormones. You can take medication for it instead of getting gender reassignment surgery that makes you feel better about your circumstances. There's a medication called Pimozide. So I'm going to introduce you to some entitled bitch with horrible lipstick.
So it's come to my attention that there's been some controversy surrounding some 3 little words. Die, cis, scum. And I don't understand why. It's just a bunch of people having hissy fits that their status quos are being challenged.
It's not a challenge of the status quo, it's hate speech.
So for those of you who've been living under a privileged rock your entire life and don't know what cis means,
no one who lives under a rock is privileged.
It's short for cisgender, which means that a long time ago, a doctor took 5 seconds to look at your baby genitals and say, You are going to be this person, and by some astronomical coincidence, you grew up and said, meh.
It's not a coincidence or astronomical. A coincidence would be if your reflection was also disappointed in itself. And astronomical would be the odds of somebody finding that lipstick appealing. And before you think I'm just attacking the vanity of some bitch, the fact is she is advocating die cis scum, so I'm not really pulling punches here.
And we're a bitty part of this little acronym, LGBT, but unfortunately, cis people are the majority in this world.
Why is it unfortunate that this cis is a majority? And why is it that I feel that if trans was the majority, you would be cis? I think you're a contrarian. I really don't think you're anything other than that. I'm going to say this preemptively. No, we don't. No, it hasn't. No, we don't.
And they think they get to decide our identities and our lives for us. This is a problem that has existed for hundreds upon hundreds of years. Cis people taking advantage of us and assuming we'll stay quiet and not complain once.
I can't think of a single trans hate crime unless you want to account for your suicide rates.
Well, a lot of people have problem with this, and in particular, trans feminine people who have been most hurt by cis supremacy. There is a lot of pent-up anger, and understandably so. Transgender people are pissed the fuck off that we constantly have to be beaten down by the sissies.
There's no oppression of trans people. There's judgment and there's scrutiny. Unfortunately, we're all subject to that. If you really want to be a woman, collect alimony, do some ineffective cardio, and call the police when you get slapped. And before there's outrage, 97% of all alimony is paid to women. And apparently, according to Tumblr, to be a man, all you have to do is take dick pics and rape women. Tips on being a man. No one cares about your feelings. If your friends and family are supportive of your sex change, you are not transitioning into a man. You should be mercilessly abused. That's what it's like to be a guy. Your friends should ridicule you until you develop an unhealthy relationship with the gym. Don't cry unless you're wasted, and learn to take a punch. No more Pilates. You might go to prison, and you always buy your own drugs. From beer to cocaine. Die cis scum. You know, ironically, the only people who understand this are probably trans people. Cis people don't self-identify as cis. That word doesn't come up in our community.
So one brilliant human being one day decided to coin the term die cis scum, and since then a lot of apparent outrage has emerged. And you know what? I totally understand the opposing arguments. But I think they're ridiculous, and here's a list why. Number one, this is not a literal sentiment.
You're a female faggot.
This is not a literal sentiment.
Your lips are literally and figuratively loud. Enjoy your suicide rates, 20 times higher than non-transgendered people.
This is not a literal sentiment.
You're post-op, but you're not fooling anybody.
This is not a literal sentiment.
You did it for attention. Trans popularity is a flash in the pan. At what point in your transition do I A, have to stop punching you, or B, can I start punching you?
This is not a literal sentiment.
As a cis person who should die, I might as well come out and say this is how cis people feel about making out with trans people.
I had sex with her! What? I had sex with her at the Marriott! Oh, why? I didn't know it was her! Oh my god! How does this happen? When they move to a new place, they're supposed to notify the neighborhood! That's how it works!
This is not a literal sentiment.
Fuck your pronouns without their consent.